No, I did not quit Hearthstone, and yes, I will be participating in the Theorycraft event for the Across the Timeways expansion, and I'm not gonna lie, there are actually a lot of decks that I'm really interested in testing, and this video is going to be my first guess on what decks I believe are going to be the strongest, the most fun, and the most exciting within Hearthstone. I'm gonna show you guys a couple of ideas that I think are going to be extremely popular and pretty powerful, as well as a couple of memes that I have prepared for some very awesome YouTube content. So if you like Hearthstone content, subscribe to this channel, blah, 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 blah. Let's get into the decks that I am the most excited for Theorycraft. Before we start talking about the decks, I just want to address a couple of things because a lot of these decks are going to look like they are 28 out of 30 cards, and that is because the Hearthstone deck building website does not understand exactly how Fabled cards work. And just in case you don't understand yourself, the way that Fabled cards work is that it is a 1 in 3 package for most of the classes, excluding Warlock, and we'll talk about the Warlock Fabled card here in a second. So that means that you have this card that fills in 3 card slots, and then you have to fill out 27 other cards in order to actually fill out the deck. So I'm not going to be able to give you guys the deck codes yet, just because of how awkward it is on the website. I'm going to wait until I have access to the streamer client for Theorycraft until I can get you guys those deck codes, and all of that information will be available on my Discord. So if you want to talk about some Hearthstone and get some deck codes over on that Discord, click the link down below in the description and you will get to our community very effectively. So let's finally talk about the cool archetypes that I believe is coming with Across the Timeways. The first deck that I want to talk about is a Fabled card that I believe has a lot of potential, but people just need to understand the synergies that are possible with this kind of deck, because it is all about Dragon Queen Sindragosa, to where if you have another dragon on the field, your arcane spells cost 2 less, and you have this combined with Azure King Malygos. If you control another dragon, your arcane spells cast twice. So my first immediate thought is to make as many copies of these dragons as possible, so that way it works with the other Fabled card, Azure Oathstone, that resummons all the dragons that have died this game. They are not resummoning unique dragons, they are resummoning any dragons that have died. So that means if you've killed off 2 Azure Queen Sindragosas, your arcane spells are going to cost 4 mana less. And if you take a look at the cards that are available in the Across the Timeways expansion, then you will see a card called Altered Time, which discovers 2 arcane spells from the past. They cost 2 less. You can make this card cost 0, and then effectively discount your next couple of arcane spells by 6 mana, because you are getting some insane value from your arcane discounts, as well as casting them twice if you have Malygos on the field. And then you also can compare this with Arcane Barrage, which is a really good tool for just dealing damage if you want to take use of the cards in the set. But one thing I feel like I need to point out is an older card that doesn't really see a lot of play, called Stellar Balanced. And if this spell gets duplicated by the Malygos, if you play it twice, you get 4 Moonfires that hit the face 4 times. Now, granted, there's some hand space that is responsible for this, but then again, you could just play Stellar Balance, Moonfire, Moonfire, into Stellar Balance, Moonfire, Moonfire. So there's just a lot of possibilities for OTKs with this deck, and there are ways of making copies of the dragons with cards like Buy One, Get One Freeze, which you could easily tutor out of the deck with the Watercolor Artist. I have decided to put in an Elise in the deck, which means we have to run a Wisp, we have to run a 9-mana Ziliax, and we also have to run a couple of other new cards like Mr. Clocksworth and Temporal Construct, which I really don't think are that good in general, but we need them for the mana cost in order to fulfill the requirement of the Elise, and that's pretty much like, what, 3 cards out of 30 that are more than like 5 mana. I think that's absolutely fine. So this is my take on trying to make a Dragon Mage work, and if it is possible to make multiple copies of the Sindragosa or the Malygos, then I believe that there is a lot of potential for dealing heavy OTK damage while also playing a minion-based mid-range deck. And speaking of minion-based mid-range decks, I have 2 ideas for a nature shaman that utilizes the card Stormrook and all of these other nature spells. But what exactly does Stormrook do? It is a 5-mana 5/5 elemental beast that whenever this would take damage with a nature spell, you summon a 5-cost minion instead. So you're not even dealing damage to this card when you activate a nature spell on it. You are just triggering its ability, and its ability is just essentially play a nature spell, which is pretty easy when you have a lot of cards that are very cheap and work very well with this 5-mana card, like Static Shock, a 0-mana spell that deals 1 damage to a minion and gives your hero +1 attack. The attack will be important here in a second when we talk about Muradin, the Shaman Fabled legendary, which I believe is extremely good, one of the best legendaries in this set, because it brings the High King's Hammer to him. And essentially what it does is that it combines the stats of the weapon and the minion, including the Wind Fury on the weapon. So essentially when you play Muradin, you are getting a 5-mana 6/6 with Rush and Wind Fury, and when it dies, it adds the weapon to your hand, which means on your turn 6, very conveniently, you can play the hammer, deal some damage with it, and then immediately shuffle it back into the deck with +2 attack in order to create a strategy very similar to Kingsbane, but you're going to kill your opponent very quickly, a lot faster than Kingsbane, depending on how exactly you look at it. But regardless, High King's Hammer works very effectively, so what if we were to go all in on supporting the weapon synergy with cards like Weapons Attendant? If you control another pirate, you can equip a random weapon from the deck. Now, you could also do this in order to pull the weapon out of the deck first, then increase its attack, and then play Muradin, which will get even more attack from the weapon. So the more that you stack the weapon, the more that you activate its death rattle, the better it just becomes, not only for dealing damage for lethal, but as well as increasing your Muradin turn, so you have big swings and giving yourself that weapon the next turn. So you have Dread Corsairs, you have Dangerous Cliffside, you have ways of increasing the attack of the weapon with cards like Skirting Death, and just I really feel like this idea is pretty solid. But if you don't like the idea of playing pirates, or if this is way too linear for you, then there's another idea that really goes in on the nature idea of this archetype. In my opinion, I don't think you want to combine the nature and the pirate package, just because there's just going to be a bit too much, and I don't know if Shaman exactly has the card draw to supplement all of these synergies working at once. So I feel like you kind of have to pick a lane with Shaman, but that's something I kind of enjoy about this expansion right now, is that there is more than one way to just have fun with the archetypes and try to build around some of these legendaries. This is exactly what we need, to where cards are powerful but flexible. This is what I need, Hearthstone. I don't want cards that are just, dead on arrival, like everything that happened with Ungoro 2. But tangent aside, what if we were to put a Cash Cow in the deck? Ooh, now we're using our brains, right? Cash Cow, play this on turn 5 in order to get as many coins as possible, so that way on your next turn, when you have Stormrook plus all of these other nature cards in the deck, then boom, you have a gigantic swing of tempo to where you summon a large amount of 5/5s, very similar to a pre-nerfed Razzle-Dazzler, whatever that card was. But the one thing that does really bring this deck back and doesn't make it that consistent is the fact that you really do need some consistent card draw and some consistent minions in order to not just die before turn 5, right? Very similar to like Naga Mage. If all you did was focus on your Spitelash Siren combo, then all you would do was just die in the early game if that one swing turn wasn't enough to bring you back. So you still have to run some early aggression cards like Murloc Grofin, for example. We have the Primordial Overseer, which I think is in a fantastic way of like bringing back the 2-mana 3/4, but you just have to play a nature spell while you're holding it, but it does give a very sweet curve of playing your pop-up book into a 2-mana 3/4. Then you can play cards like Flight of the Firehawk to draw your much-needed tribe cards, like your Stormrook, like your Cash Cow, or even your Zavis to discover some of these other cards. And I've even gone so far to put the Grifta in the deck in the hopes of finding the Amulet of Discounting, whichever one discounts, and yeah, Amulet of whatever, where you discount your hand, and then you, boom, just pop off all of these nature cards in addition to your Stormrook. So it's kind of all in on this like early game synergy, and if you don't end the game by like turn 7, turn 8, you're probably not going to win. But this is about the best attempt that I could make at trying to make a Stormrook deck that is all about the nature spells. Next up is probably going to be Hearthstone's favorite archetype, because Time Thief Rafaam is such an awesome win condition and is exactly how you should try to design OTK decks, to where it's actually, in my opinion, if this deck becomes quote-unquote meta, it is such an easy deck to disrupt, dude. All you need is 2 Dirty Rats, and you have such a good chance at hitting one of the Rafaams, because your opponent has 10 that they need to play. And unfortunately for the Rafaam player, if you have an expensive Rafaam in your hand and you can't play it out, it is just always on your mind. Is it going to get discarded? Is it going to get thrown out of my hand? Because Warlock actually got a card that discards players' cards from both hands. So I really don't think that Rafaam is going to be like the turbo top of the tier, cream of the crop in terms of the meta tier lists, but I do believe it is going to be a powerful deck to where if you are not good against it, it will just farm you, and it will just take advantage of the fact that you can still play Ancient of Yours, drawing out your deck, never dying until you have your Rafaams ready to go. And the great thing about this archetype, in my opinion, is that you have a reason to actually fight for the board. You have 10 Rafaams that get shuffled into your deck that all cost different mana costs, 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 10, and if you play all of these Rafaams and then play your final Rafaam for 10 mana, you win the game. You destroy the enemy hero. But the thing that really sucks about this deck is that you have deck inconsistency now, because you might draw some of these other Rafaams before you're ready to play them, before they're going to get a lot of value, or sometimes they're just not going to be the right card you need in the moment because you want to play your Ancient of Yore on like turn 5, that kind of stuff, right? So I think that this actually opens a very interesting idea to where do we go more for mid-range and we use Rafaam in order to have that top end to where if the game goes on longer we have a win condition, or do you just want to go all in on trying to play Rafaam as quickly as possible, and you just supplement the deck with a lot of control tools, a lot of stall? It really just depends on how you want to make this into a mid-range minion deck that has an OTK versus just going all in for the OTK. And I have decided to go kind of all in for the OTK, but because I am part of the Theorycraft event and I have to run 10 new cards on this expansion, and since I have to run those 10 cards, I decided to try out the Shred of Time cards, which I think are very interesting. Very similar to the Soul Fragments during Skullomance Academy, we now have a card that is being shuffled into the deck that we actually want to actively discard from deck in order to pop off some sort of ability. And you have Ruinous Velocidrake that summons a copy of itself. You have a 4-mana 4/4 with Taunt that becomes a 7/7 if you destroy that Shred of Time. I think this is a very interesting archetype to kind of bring back like a minion-based Warlock. I really do believe that this set is designed with minion support in mind, and this is a great way of going about it because these cards actually look good on their own. They're not just good within the archetype. So you have this card that deals 6 damage split among all enemies, and I've heard some people saying that you could do this plus the new Coyote card, which is a 5-mana 5/3 with stealth that gets discounted for every time your opponent has been hit in the face. So you could easily do that and have an insane amount of tempo if you want to go all in on playing this deck aggressively, which I might make another version of this just because this is all in on Rafaam. I'm kind of ranting, I'm kind of all over the place, but that's exactly where my brain is going whenever I'm thinking about the potentials of Warlock right now. And just, I don't know, man, maybe 12 hours in the Theorycraft event is not going to be enough time for me. I'm having a lot of fun coming up with these deck ideas, and these that I've just shown you are the ones I am the most excited for, but it doesn't stop there. I have a lot more madness that I'd like to share with you all. Now we're starting to get a little bit into the meme territory because I'm not gonna lie, my favorite cards are degenerate as hell. Timeway Warden, a 4-mana 2/6 battlecry, imprison an enemy minion. It goes dormant for 10,000 turns. You thought Hostage Demon Hunter was bad with armor? Oh lord, Timeway Warden is gonna make you reevaluate how you look at your Demon Hunter cards, because I thought it was bad enough already, yeah? But in any case, its Death Rattle says Awaken it, but I'm never going to activate the Death Rattle. That's never going to happen. I am going to return this minion to my hand with Youthful Brewmasters. I'm going to silence it with Librarians if I decide that's the way to take the deck, because honestly, I have gone for going for copies of Zai in order to make copies of the Timeway Wardens. You also have Return Policy, by the way, because this minion is a Death Rattle, which, really fucking cool. You can make copies of the Warden with Return Policy, and I don't think that this deck is optimal in any way, shape, or form, but I just want to show you guys like the first building blocks of this type of archetype I am trying to build. Because the one thing I am immediately noticing is that not only do I have to play enough Timeway Wardens in order to lock out 7 minions from my opponent, I also need to silence or return them to my hand one way or another. So I probably have to play those Librarians. This is going to be one of the most difficult challenges that is possible, where is it possible for me during the Theorycraft event to lock out my opponent with all 7 of their minion spaces being completely taken over by imprisoned minions? I think it's hilarious. I think it's degenerate as hell, and this kind of stuff really makes me enjoy Hearthstone. So maybe we can make this work, but if you actually want a legitimate Demon Hunter deck, then there is hope for you, because there is a spell Demon Hunter, more so minion-less Demon Hunter, because you can still run things like weapons and locations. This non-minion Demon Hunter actually looks like it has some potential, and the reason for it is because of the new cards that are essentially supporting no minion Demon Hunter. You have the Eternal Hold, which gives you a demon that costs 5 or more, and if your deck has no minions, your next minion costs 0. That's what this card does. It is essentially a mana cheat tool for a minion-less Demon Hunter that is spending its entire time generating extra copies of random demons through the spells that are available in the pool, and we will be going over them so you know just how plenty they are. But yeah, the Eternal Hold is essentially your mana cheat tool, and this is going to be essentially the Barnes of the deck, to where if you can play this by turn 5 on coin, then it's the best thing that you can do if you've supported the deck properly. So I think this archetype actually has a lot of potential due to these other cards as well. You have Hounds of Fury, which summons 2 3/3 demons. If your deck has no minions, they attack the lowest health enemy. Very good for board generation and for taking away your opponent's tempo while developing your own. While you have Lasting Legacy, which gives your hero +4 attack this turn. If your deck has no minions, you give any minions in hand +4 attack. And then you have cards like Solitude, which discovers minions, and if your deck has no minions, you reduce the cost of any in your hand by 2 mana. So keep in mind, you can play the Fabled card, since Brozigar, however you pronounce it, he literally disappears from the deck, so you don't have any minions to worry about. He gives you a portal that activates automatically, as well as a weapon, so you don't have to worry about having a minion in the deck. So you can essentially focus on completing your quest by getting your 12/12, or you can use the other cards like Emergency Meeting, Blind Box, and I think there's one other card that discovers spells, but I decided not to put it in here since it is a fel spell, and it can be discovered by cards like Hive Map. I believe the card is Demonic Deal. Not really a big fan of putting this into the deck, and I don't like playing this unless I know exactly what I'm going to do to get that demon out of the top of my deck immediately. I don't want to play this on turn 2 and limit my card draw, so that's just the reason why I didn't put it in the deck. It's fine to discover it, but maybe this actually is good enough now that we have this type of support to actually hard run it in the deck. So I think that Demon Hunter has a lot of deck building challenges that it's going to have to overcome, but Spell Demon Hunter seems to be a massive archetype that Blizzard is really going all in on supporting. And one little thing I want to show you guys. Don't forget, Champions of Azeroth. You could find Velen. You could find Archmage and Tinnitus, and you could reduce their cost even more than the Champions of Azeroth already does. So there's a lot of potential for this deck. I think that it could potentially be a tier 1 archetype if we figure out the perfect 30. But for Theorycraft, I'm just trying to make the spiciest thing possible, and Archmage and Tinnitus combos in Demon Hunter, in my opinion, is pretty spicy. Next up, I have made a spicy Paladin deck, and I've made 2 Paladin decks to kind of show you the ideas of what I am thinking of, but it is all about the new cards, Tank Engineer, I think is how you pronounce it, as well as these Aura cards. The Aura package is very powerful, except I don't think you put Manifest Timeways in here. You'll see what we're going for here in a second. But what I am trying to recreate, as toxic as it may sound, I am trying to recreate Secret Paladin, but instead of secrets, you have auras, and it's actually kind of more powerful because auras last over 3 turns as you pop this off. So what exactly is this deck trying to do? I have the early game of Egg Paladin, to where you just want to play your SCVs, you want to reduce the cost of your starship, you want to launch it so that way you can play Hellion into Egg of Kelos and just pop off and get a 20/20. Now, the reason why I thought this was a good idea to support this early archetype is because I really like the idea of some kind of mid-range Paladin deck that is using Tank Engineer and Carnivorous Cubicle, because if I can have the perfect curve of playing this on 4 into Cubicle on 5, I can then play the PM Infinitizer in order to either trade and then make a minion into an 8/8, or make a minion into an 8/8 and then trade. And I don't necessarily care about going face because I'm just trying to build the stickiest board possible. So I think there's a lot of potential with this kind of archetype, and in order to supplement this with like some potential late game, we have Gelman of Tomorrow, which is a fantastic Fable card because it gives you 2 auras that have tradable, so you have some actual like cycle ability in the deck to make this a lot more consistent. And this card is a battle cry. Put each of your auras onto the battlefield from your deck, and you have this aura that essentially heals you, an aura that gives a minion +4/+4 and Divine Shield, and then you have the other auras. That's right, it pulls the other auras from the deck, like a Crafter's Aura. I really just have this in here for a 7-drop, not really that big of a fan of it, but one other thing I do like is Chronological Aura, because if you can play the Gelbin, then you can essentially heal yourself for 4, play a dragon with Taunt that has 3/5, and then you give it a +4/+4 and Divine Shield buff all at once. And if you have Crafter's Aura on top of that, you summon a 6-drop on top of it. I feel like there's just a lot of potential for this style of deck that is just always going to have a minion on the field. Now, is the egg package the best way of going about this? I am not 100% sure. So that is why I decided to build another version of the deck that is a lot more of like just an aggressive mid-range deck that really just wants to hit that perfect curve every game. We've got 1-drops. We've got Past Nomarcon, which is probably the only good past-present location in the game. I gotta say, these locations were very lackluster to me. But this card is essentially 2 mana, give yourself 10 damage as long as you have minions on the field. So I really like that because Paladin just always wants to have minions on the field, right? So you supplement that with cards like Red Scale Dragon Tamer for some good consistent 2-drops in case you don't hit the nuts every single game. And one thing to keep in mind about Red Scale Dragon Tamer is that, yeah, obviously you could use it to hit your Anachronos, but one card that I feel like is going to be so good in this expansion is Portal Vanguard. Rewind, draw the minion, and give it +2/+2. You can either use this to try and get the nice curve that you're looking for every single game, or you can do this and draw a very important minion for your combo. So not only is it a good mid-range card, it is a very good combo card. Just, I love this kind of card. So, boom, you have actual potential of always having minions on the field. You still have the Tank Engineer and the Cube combo, as well as the Infinitizer for just constant threats on the board as long as you have that board. And we still have Elise in both of these decks just because I got to admit, I'm a whore for Elise. It's such a good card. There's a lot of ways to come back with it, and for truly in a mid-range meta, I would rather have more avenues for resources rather than less avenues. So I really think that there is something here with Tank Engineer giving you a 7/7 every single time you activate its Death Rattle. It is just a matter of whether or not it has a home to fit in. Next up is probably going to be the most common first combo deck that we're going to see in this expansion, because I'm sorry, I am really trying to think outside the box when it comes to Murozond Unbounded, but the only 2 things I can even think of that remotely begin to sound good is obviously using this kind of combo in Zarimi Priest, where you play Murozond as well as Zarimi in order to just win the game on the next turn with infinite attack, or you can use Time Warp and Warrior in order to make Murozond good there. I know. The thing that's really annoying about this card is that I see infinite attack and my brain goes awooga. I go, oh, I really want to make this work. But like outside of like what, playing Rogue and playing Conceal, or maybe bringing back this dragon a whole bunch of times and hoping your opponent can't clear it, I just feel like this is just going to be one of those cards to where it's just not going to be that fun going up against it just because of the time skips that are available in the game. I'm just not sure if there's going to be a lot of creativity around this card, so unfortunately, if you guys are not fans of Zarimi Priest, you might want to look away, because that's exactly what I made. I made Zarimi Priest. It's just typical, you know, minion fodder. Play minions, maybe play Elise for some extra value, and then you have your Gnarlex into Ysera, gain some mana, and then you have Murozond into Zarimi in order to end the game, repackaged to stall out time, and then you can also use the Medivh in order to silence and destroy minions. So you have a little bit of ways of interacting with the board a bit more frequently, but at the end of the day, people see Zarimi and they just cringe a little bit. So I don't really know what else to say. Priest might have some other archetypes with the new cards that increase the health of minions, but I'm not gonna lie, I didn't like what I was building when I was making the deck. Might actually be something there for Priest. I'm just not going to be the guy to figure it out, unfortunately. Now, I have saved the best combo for last. because I believe there is a potential for a ChoTK combo, but it is the biggest meme I think that is possible from this set. And it is all thanks to the 1-mana spell, Deja Vu. Discover a copy of a card in your opponent's hand, it costs 1 mana less. The way that this combo works is that you play your Cho, you play your Deja Vu with the goal of only hitting Deja Vus over and over and over again, and you can combine this with the power of Rumble Enthusiast. That's right, Warcraft Rumble is still alive in our hearts. God, I can't even say that seriously. But you play a Rumble Enthusiast as a 3-mana 2/5. After you play the right or leftmost card in your hand, you deal 1 damage to a random enemy. So, theoretically speaking, you could deal infinite damage by chaining the Deja Vu over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And as you continue to add Deja Vus into the hand, it is way more likely for you to discover it from your opponent's hand. But if they only have 2 cards, then you can guarantee this, infinite loop. But the one thing that is definitely going to keep this combo a little bit at bay is the fact that you not only need to do this infinite loop when your opponent has not that many cards in hand, but I'm gonna be honest, I think you're gonna have to play both Rumble Enthusiasts in order to even make a combo like this work. So something I actually might need to do is add a Scoundrel into this deck, so that way it's actually possible to pop off this combo. Just because, you could play 1-mana Scoundrel into Rumble Enthusiast, 1-mana Scoundrel into the second Enthusiast, then play Cho into Deja Vu, which is just probably going to be the best way of actually doing this. So I'm going to just go ahead and get rid of a Knick-Knack Shack for a Scoundrel. But yeah, that's the idea. You just try to loop the Deja Vus over and over again. However, I really doubt I'm going to have enough time to do it with 1 Rumble Enthusiast. So we're going to try and get both of them out in the field and see how it works. I really just want to see if this combo is possible. If it's possible, we'll probably make a YouTube video talking about it. So those are all the decks I'm excited for. I'm not going to lie. I am really hoping that this is not going to be like Ungoro 2, to where I was hyped at the beginning and then suddenly everything just came crashing down because the power is not there. I think that these cards are have decent power level, especially compared to what we've seen in the past. I believe a lot of these archetypes may actually come into the front runners of the meta and will actually be interesting to see gameplay because there seems to be a lot of moving pieces with these decks. So don't forget to like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because we'll be doing theory crafting tomorrow for 12 hours, both on Twitch and on YouTube, and there will be several giveaways that'll be happening on those live streams, as well as maybe a giveaway in some other places. We'll keep you guys updated once I figure out what exactly to do, because I'm getting the codes today to figure out how many giveaways I even have. So thank you guys so much for making it to the end of this video. If you made it all the way here, type Rafaam in the comments if you made it this far, so that way I know just how many people watched the video all the way to the end. Thank you so much for making it to the end of this insane Across the Timeways deck review, and we'll see you for the next video.